we've got our drums picked, we've got our heads on them. Now it's time to tune the drums and make them sound great in the room before we can put the microphones on them. Again, part of getting the great sound from the drums is making the actual drums sound good to your ear in the room. Because if they don't sound good in here, they're never going to sound good in the control room under the microscope with microphones on them. So Ross is going to walk us through tuning some drums and treating them to make them sound awesome in here.
Okay, so let's start with the kick drum. This kick drum, at this point, nothing inside of it. This is the way it sounds. And it's not bad where it's at, but it's not right for what we're doing today. So we're going to adjust it a little bit. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a little muffling inside of it because the heads are just a little too resonant the way they are.
So right now it's wide open, right? Nothing
There's
inside,
nothing
no
inside
muffling.
it, yeah. I like a little piece of a blanket, and I fold it up so that it fits inside there. And you can do this with a pillow or whatever you have handy. A lot of times people will take a pillow off their couch, or they'll take their jacket or sweatshirt or laundry, whatever they want to put inside there. As long as it's in the bottom of the drum and it's touching both heads, it should muffle it down pretty good.
Do you cut the blanket to the depth of the drum in a best case scenario?
I actually cut the blanket so that it's twice the depth of the drum so I can fold it over.
Okay.
So that when it's folded over, it's touching both heads and it's snug inside of the drum.
So it's not going to move anywhere.
Yeah,
or
so the
slide
heads
around.
actually hold it in place.
Right.
So let's see what that does to the sound. So that muffles it down quite a bit. Takes it kind of punchy. It's still a little high for my liking. Let me loosen down some of the tension rods here and see what we get when I take it down a little bit. It's getting a little better. Loosen it down a little bit more. It sounds pretty good. We'll leave that like that for now until we hear it in the context of the song, and then we'll make adjustments if need be. And I can imagine we might move the blanket around a little bit on the inside as well.
Do we need to deal with the front head at all?
We could experiment around. You want to experiment?
Yeah, I mean,
a little
like
bit?
what effect does the front head have on the overall tone of the drum?
Well, it has the same effect as the back in that the tighter it is, the higher the drum's going to sound. Mm-hmm. So if we loosen that down a little bit, you'll get a little bit lower note out of the kick, and you'll also get a little bit more what I call flap off the front head. You'll get a little bit more of that front head moving, and that'll translate into air moving. Mm-hmm. You want me to try it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Let's hear that.
Why don't you hit the kick drum and I'll loosen it down. This is pretty loose to begin with, so it's not going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, I can feel the low end back here.
Yeah. So you're getting a little bit more low end. You're getting a little bit more movement on that front head, so that would translate into a liver sounding drum, mm-hmm. as well as lower. And we'll see what the mics pick up, and then I'll adjust accordingly.
Right.
All right, so usually the kick drum is where we start in the studio anyway. Mm-hmm. So we'll start there. Then I'm moving the snare drum. Snare drum is cranked a little high for my taste right now. Again, it might work for some songs, but I think for what our purposes are today, we should muffle it down a little bit. Take the pitch down a little bit. So what I'm going to suggest for that is just fold up a piece of Kleenex, put it on the drum, take a piece of gaffer's tape or any kind of tape you can find. I tend to like the gaffer's tape. And just tape it across the head, and that will take most of that ring out of there. So that's not so bad, just by putting that on there. So that actually got rid of most of the weird overtones, but I'm going to take this drum down a little bit, just because it's a big drum, and I like my big drums tuned fat and sassy. Oh, so that's got a whole lot more attitude now.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
It seems to speak really well there.
Yeah, and I can see how the guys in the control room will get kind of excited when they hear that
Yeah.
through the mics.
Now, when you're tuning a drum, particularly a snare drum, I mean, you can tune it up, you can tune it down, but just as you just had it, I mean, it was really high and, it sounded okay, but then you get it to a pitch where the drum itself is happy, like there's a resonance to it.
There's a sweet spot.
There's a sweet spot to it.
The better the drum and the better condition the drum is, like if the edges are good, if the shell is good, as long as the heads are fairly new, you'll have a bigger sweet spot.
Right.
So you can get the drum sounding good higher as well as lower. So there's a bigger sweet spot. I can usually tell if a drum's not right, where if it only has one sweet spot. So if I can basically only take it to one place that it sounds good, then it's you're compromising with your equipment.
There's a problem in there somewhere that needs to be fixed.
And I mean, with what I do, I like to start with something that is good to begin with, and you're only going to get better from there.
Right.
I mean, the way I look at it is recording is forever. I mean, once you make a recording, even if you don't hit it out of the park, you're still going to live with that recording forever. And when you go back to listen to it in a year or 10 years or whatever, you want to say, hey, I'm still proud of that. That sounded good back then.
Yeah.
I don't want to cringe when I hear it.
And now with a snare, again, we just dealt with the top head. How does the tuning of the bottom head relate to what the drum's doing and how good it's going to sound in the end?
The bottom head was, obviously the drum sounds good now, so the bottom head was in good shape. It's real important that the bottom head is nice and snug on a snare drum. I think that the bottom head should be, I would say, at least a fifth above the top head on a snare drum, if not a third. The gist of it is that the bottom head is tighter than the top head on a snare drum, most of the time. And again, there's no hard and fast rules. It's all up to experimentation. If you're not happy with where it's at, mess around with it and don't be afraid. A lot of people are afraid to touch the bottom head, especially on the snare drum, because it's a thin membrane. They're afraid they're going to break it.
Right.
And as long as you keep it symmetrical, you're probably not going to break it. And make sure all these edges aren't sharp and aren't digging into the head. More snare drum bottom heads get broken by some little thing that's digging into the head that starts a little tiny dent, and then that's a point of weakness. And there's so much tension here that any little point of weakness can turn into a split.
Right.
So that's it for the bottom of the snare drum.
And I mean, arguably, the snare drum sets the character for the song. The snare drum is in a pop record and a rock record is really like one of the trademark sounds of that song.
I couldn't agree more.
And it needs to be the right sound. So the combination of the drum, the head, and the tuning will really determine a big part of the character of that song.